If you're watching this video on release, then happy St. Patrick's Day, when the other 70% of Americans identify as Irish. As I mentioned in a previous video, I had a video planned for this day. I wanted to talk about a short story I wrote. But first, a little background. My mother is an Irish citizen. Her mother's parents were Irish. She did that well after I was born, and both my brother and I were very annoyed, and she was like, well, back in the 80s and 90s, nobody wanted to be an Irish citizen, so why would I have done that? But when I was looking at teaching English abroad, I probably would have gone to Eastern Europe instead of Turkey. I was really interested in Turkish culture, but I was also interested in Eastern Europe, and it would have been very easy if I had been an EU citizen. So especially back in my early 20s, I was very annoyed with my mother for not doing this. Especially this was pre-Brexit, so now probably you would get more sponsors because the British are non-EU citizens too. But I know, of course, that the American love of Ireland and the Irish is kind of a one-way street. It's sort of the inverse of the stereotype with the Canadians, the Australians, and the UK, where they all think they have a special relationship with the US, and Americans are like, what? Except the Irish know the Americans are into Ireland. It just annoys them a bit. So I mentioned I actually got this book because I was curious. So I knew that Americans had been heavily involved in trying to finance and support the Irish attempts at independence before that was actually achieved. And that was a great source of frustration to the British, and I wondered how the Irish felt. And I didn't really get an answer to this. I learned more about the US-British relations, and I also learned that it was mostly actual Irish Americans from Ireland who supported this, and it wasn't, as I had thought, second and third generation Americans, at least as this guy presents it. But anyways, the reason I wanted to make this video is I wanted to talk about a short story that I wrote, which I ended up self-publishing, and I'll get into it. So the short story is titled, Now Can We Buy Killarney? And it was inspired by the song, How Can You Buy Killarney? Which is famously, it's about an American goes to Ireland and asks, how can I buy Killarney? And there's a list of all these things that you can't buy, and it says when you can buy all these wonderful things, then you can buy Killarney. And I realized that a lot of these things either you can buy, although some of them are pedantic, like obviously you could buy emeralds and shamrocks at the time, and others we are close to being able to do that. And so I thought this would make an interesting pretext for a story. And this was back the first Trump term when he was trying to buy Greenland, and he wasn't threatening anyone then, but the media was all being like, why would you want Greenland? Which I think now everyone understands the strategic importance of Greenland, but of course we have that as a NATO ally. But anyways, so I used that sort of as a pretext, as a frame for this story, and the feedback I got most consistently was they liked it, but they felt like it didn't have enough punch at the end and it needed some menace. And I realized that might be because of, I mean, I was also anti-Trump, but it was a very anti-Trump audience, and I wasn't really writing this as like a Trump story. Again, the premise was I was amused by, oh, I can imagine like buying everything in this song now. And so that was the reason, the premise for this story. However, so I read this book recently as well, and I'm going to make a video on this that I'm hoping will come out on the 31st, which is the 77th anniversary of Newfoundland joining Canada. But one of the things he talks about in here is that the British, if the British were applying the same standard to Newfoundland that they applied to themselves or their other colonies, they would not have forced Newfoundland to give up its independence. But they did that because Newfoundland was strategically located on the new transatlantic aviation routes, and they wanted direct control over that. And now Killarney is located in County Kerry, which is strategically located in terms of the transatlantic cables. And I didn't really get into that in the story. Historically, it was the Shannon Airport in nearby County Clare was like one of the major hubs because you couldn't fly directly from New York to London, but you could get to, at least from Newfoundland to Shannon, and I think later from New York to Shannon. And so that was a major transit point. And so I was amused by this idea of sort of having this frame story of an American president trying to buy Killarney. And then obviously with Trump's second term with the actual Greenland threat. So actually he wasn't making threats at the time, but it became relevant because he was still talking about buying it. And I revised it, incorporating a lot of the Elon Musk stuff that happened just because that was amusing to me. And then I didn't do anything with it until the threats came up. And then I'm like, oh, what should I do with this story? Because I had written it, it's a short story, And it's the kind of story that I probably could have gotten published in like an actual literary magazine, even though it's a science fiction story. It has that kind of, it's the kind of science fiction story that literary magazines publish. And in fact, the woman who used to run the writing group like observed, like, you're not trying to write literary science fiction, are you? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, oh, because people who write literary science fiction, I guess, generally aren't as into genre science fiction, and I'm into both. But so it's like, this could have been an opportunity to get it published in a literary publication, but there's no guarantee, and it would also definitely be understood as an anti-Trump story. And again, Trump is the frame, is the pretext, and I'm not a fan of Trump, but it's the reason for writing this story is because I liked this song and I was amused by this idea. And so I decided, okay, well, I could also try to publish it in the science fiction markets, but I don't know if y'all know, but there has been a flood, like people sending AI slop stories to the professional science fiction market, so there's a huge backlog now, so it probably would not have gotten through for months. And so I self-published it, and nobody picked up on it. I don't know if anyone will pick up on it after reading this video, now that the Greenland thing has passed again for the time. But again, I wrote it wasn't really about Greenland, even though that was sort of the frame of reference. It was, again, just I found this idea amusing of, oh, we're close to actually being able to buy all the stuff in How Can You Buy Killarney? And that seemed like a fun pretext for a story. And it's a short story. It's written as a letter from a character who is based on Rudy Giuliani. And this was back before the 4-season Total Landscaping thing, too. But anyways, so if you're interested, link in the description. It's on my Substack, completely free. And thanks for watching. I'm Magpie. This is Leela, and I'll see y'all in the next one.